so I provided an agenda for our peer-to-peer debrief, and this should take about 20 minutes, I think. And just to review, you have your peer-to-peer coach activity planning template that the two of you created. All right, let's review the learning objectives and the measurable outcomes for your peer-to-peer activity, which is what you decided to do on the activity plan for the learning objective. And I'll just read it real quick, okay? So Emily and Rachel will watch behavior rehearsal and live coaching videos using the skill set rubric and the interview outline to engage both coachee and peer in an open-ended conversation about observations for each by May 8th. And that happened.
It did happen.
And how did it go? How did you feel it went?
It went really well.
Okay.
You know, I really liked watching the videos and seeing the two different types of parents in them, and how Rachel kind of went about and asking all the questions, and how detailed it was, and how many really parts there are. You know, when you think about it, you don't always go into an interview thinking about exactly what you should do, and that really laid it out in a really good format. Especially for me, because I really I never even thought about doing some of those things, when probably I'm doing them naturally, but I might forget here and there. So it was kind of nice to have that, to be like, oh, it's really nice to see how it was done.
Yeah, and you just nailed that part about fidelity. So if it's done the same way each time, then that's the fidelity piece.
I remember one of the comments that you made was when I was talking, when we were looking at the actual skill set rubric, and we're like, show the parent to their seat, and I remember you were thinking, I don't think I had ever thought about that before, ever. And I was like, I don't think you've never done it, but it's, not something that you think about. It's not something that you think about.
Right.
I was like, I've been sitting at interviews, or not interviews, but like teacher conferences, where we're sitting there, the parents just kind of standing there, and you're like, hey, go come on in, sit down. I was like, it's kind of one of those natural things, but you're not thinking about those different steps. I did think it just opened up a lot of conversation.
Okay, good. Then we can go over that some more here in a minute. So that learning objective worked pretty well then. And then you had your action plan of who was going to do what and the resources that you needed. And did that go pretty smoothly?
It did, yeah.
Okay. All right, good. And then you decided that for the measurable outcome, you decided to use the pre and post activity evaluation.
Yeah, you did it.
So you had already checked off the pre-activity evaluation, number one, as what best describes your knowledge of the skill topic before peer-to-peer activity, and you had marked moderate. So now, Emily, you can go ahead and fill out the post-activity evaluation.
Okay.
So that would be 2, 3, 4.
She did it. She was on top of it.
I was on top of it.
Oh, good. Okay.
Just mark it on the newer one.
Yeah, no, what you have is fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, great. So then let's just review that real quickly, because I want to take notes on the learning objectives and activity content. So the objectives of this activity were clearly explained. How did you feel about that?
Agreed.
Okay. Okay, any reason why you didn't strongly agree?
I understood. I don't know, I felt like I agreed with it. I wasn't like overconfident in it, I guess.
Okay.
So that's why I didn't go to that. Strongly agreed.
All right, and then overall activity met my learning objectives.
Agreed.
Okay. The supporting materials in this activity were useful.
Agreed.
Okay. And the format provided opportunities for me to practice applying the information.
Agreed.
The activity provided information that will support my work in the promotion of young children's social competence and addressing challenging behaviors.
I said strongly agreed.
Okay. The activity provided information that will support my work in the inclusion of young children.
Agreed.
And which of the following best describes your knowledge of the skill topic area after?
Moderate.
Okay. So about the same as before.
Yeah, maybe a little more, but I wouldn't go to the extreme of.
Yeah.
And which of the following best describes the amount of skills you can immediately implement?
I said moderate.
Okay. So I did ask you to give me a little bit more about the first one, the objectives. Did you have any other comments or notes that you made on the others that you agreed with, and maybe on the one that you strongly agreed?
Let me think here.
Your birdies are
loud.
so
They are.
They were so intimidated by the noise of the kids. They were so quiet in class, and now they're just like, it's my turn.
The reason that I put that on strongly agree is just addressing challenges, talking to the parents. This really gave me a good, starting point to find out more information so I can maybe avoid those kind of problems or just be more aware about them. So I felt that this really gave me a really good information on how to do that.
All right. And let's see. Well, okay, and if you didn't have anything else you wanted to discuss about those, what about number 6? What have you, Emily, learned that you will implement in your setting?
I don't think I'm ready to just implement it right away. I think I would need a lot more practice with it, and it's very time consuming. But I did learn a lot about how it works. And Rachel actually gave me a copy of the rubric that she used, just as a reminder for me, so I can look at it and learn more too about how to, have the conversation flow, how to start talking to parents, how to end it, how to stay engaged, those kinds of things.
It's almost like we're having this conversation outside.
Whoever watches this is
Sorry,
birds.
there's so loud. They were not
That's okay.
this loud today. I did not think that would be a problem.
It's not a problem for me, but it's not a problem for you.
Have you noticed that when we start talking, they get quiet? But when it's a little bit more quiet, they start.
It's my turn.
Okay, and then, so I understand that you don't feel like you're ready to use this right away, but I also heard you say that just even in a couple of the questions, you realized how important it was to find out to be able to address some challenging behaviors and maybe do something to prevent, because you're getting that information through that interview.
Yes.
And even just to be more aware,
Yeah.
you know, so that was great that you picked that up during the peer-to-peer, because it might be something that you want to do in the future
Yeah.
to help to get to know the children and the parents with the families a little bit better. What about you, Rachel? How did you feel the process of the peer-to-peer?
I really liked that we were just able to have that open-ended conversation. That just really flowed naturally. And I don't think there was any way we could anticipate what was going to end up kind of coming to our attention or kind of spark our interest, you know, as we were watching it, of what we might want to say.
So what were they? What were those sparks and what were those?
Well, some of the things were kind of a difference between a parent who doesn't talk much and a parent who might talk a lot more. So it's kind of like, oh, in some cases you might have a challenge of trying to get the parent to give you more than just one-word simple answers, and in others you might have a hard time getting to the next question without, you know, just like, okay, you need to be quiet now. Those kinds of things, you know, how you could kind of see how it could go to extremes. We really noticed in one video that the parent was becoming more and more comfortable as the video went on. That became really obvious. I felt something that I really wanted to share because I thought it was an important part of my learning in doing this was that sense of responsibility that I felt. That if they're telling me something that was difficult, I felt a sense of responsibility of immediately letting them know I hear you and that can be addressed in some way. Mm-hmm. You know, whether it be, you know, we can talk about that, we can look at these options, we can address it now, we can set up a different meeting, you know, I'll just whatever time-wise, you know, and all those kinds of things would depend upon that. I was sharing the challenge of it being difficult to how often you really had to be thinking on your toes all the time. I really felt like I needed to be able to think on my toes, and I think for a beginning teacher who is more about just kind of having to follow step-by-step routines, that there was lots of divergent things that I felt like I had to do in my mind. It would be really difficult. It would be difficult to learn. So it really is, I think, something that to be able to do well or really do meaningfully, you have to have a ton of practice and things like that. And I just think, you know, just on my years of being teaching and things like that, have allowed me to be able to do that. But I don't know if I could have even done that my first 9 years, you know.
Right, and so it's just amazing by Rachel going through the circuit, she mastered the strategy, and you know, by doing that, she's ready to use it. Now she may modify it. She may, you know, she's already recognized that she might want to split up the questions at different times of the year, so the time.
That's something we talked a little bit about too. So it's like, I just don't think this is going to be feasible in one thing, so we're talking about. Yeah, I was telling her some of my plans of how I might try to kind of split it up and see if that works, and kind of guinea pig. It's kind of almost fun in a sense to be a guinea pig person and say, well, I'm going to try this and I'll let you know if it works. So then I think, you know, eventually down the road, you know, it might not be, you know, oh, I'm going to go and do that right now, but maybe after like 3 years, you know, I think I'm ready to jump in a little bit and try that with one of the parents, and you know, it's worked for you splitting it up, or wow, that really didn't work, don't do that. That wasn't a good idea. You know, I think you don't really know that stuff and how it's going to work until you try it.
Right. And just even from the beginning of this whole process, you both have taken the Pyramid Plus trainings. I mean, that's a huge strength in itself. And then also, Emily, the fact that you're willing to learn and you're excited to learn and wanted to see what Rachel has learned and can share that behavior rehearsal and the life coaching, and then talk about what you observed, so definitely a lot of strengths come out of this activity for both of you. Is there anything else that you might like to do to make this more successful for you, Rachel or Emily? Just based on the peer-to-peer, is there anything that you found interesting that you would like to try, or you have any other that helps you recognize any needs of your own?
I mean, I would like maybe kind of like a reflection on how, after a long time, how it's going. You know what I mean? So maybe me and Rachel can meet up and say, hey, did you do some of those? How is it working? She'll be able to tell me what's going on and how it's working for her. And then maybe I can just start, doing one or two questions, start adding on to it. But I don't want it to be just like, this is what we learned. Okay, that was it, and we don't still have that communication with this project.
So it sounds like you might like to implement it eventually.
Eventually.
And maybe in chunks, maybe gradually.
Yeah.
And that's what's nice about peer-to-peer coaching.
Well, I definitely feel like I need to implement it in little chunks. Even kind of knowing it and doing it a little bit. I feel like I have the confidence in doing it, but it's really more about the time and not putting too much pressure on parents as far as everything I'm expecting to get out of them at any one visit, and what's going to be most meaningful for them, really going over the whole TS Gold sheet, really going over the whole goal list, doing the interview, because they're all really important things, and it's like, well,
and they're all time consuming.
They're all time consuming.
So do you feel like with any of those, that once you've done it several times, it does get a little bit faster and a little bit more routine, and like with anything that's not new anymore?
No, I don't. And the reason why I don't is because the interview really is about the conversation, and if it's shorter, then you're not getting the meat. And I can see interviews going faster, but it would be because the parents aren't really sharing a whole lot. It's because they're short answer.
Yeah, no, with an interview I can see.
And once they start getting open, and we have streamlined big time our teacher conferences and stuff. I was like, I'm so excited. It's like boom, 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 and I look up, half an hour has gone by. Gosh, how did that happen?
Right.
I thought I was going so fast. I mean, and so I really think that a lot of those things we've really kind of cut down as much as we can. So I think it's really about how much and at what times, because maybe it's not go through every, and when I say every point, I don't mean all 54 objectives on TS Gold, but we pick out like 3 of each thing. But maybe say, you can look here and see the skills that they're doing right now in language development, and I feel this is a strength. And you can look here and see what they're doing in gross motor, and everything's looking good. And just do it more like that. And then this is something I have concern with, and this is something we might want to make a goal and talk about a goal or something around that. And that'll give us some more time at the end. But it would be totally changing how we're doing it.
Okay.
So for me, it's about trying it out with a couple of parents and saying, did that work for you? Did you feel like I totally blew through that? Does that make any sense? I'd really need an honest parent to say, that was completely useless to me.
So if you were to modify the interview to ask less questions and split it up during the year, are there any other modifications that you would make to it, or is that something you would try first and see how that goes?
I'm gonna try that first and see how that goes, because I think those first 2 questions could easily, I mean, not as time-wise or anything, but I think they would make sense to be at a home visit.
Right.
Just tell me about your kids, and what are some things you and your family like to do, just kind of some conversation starters, and I care about you guys, and what you do, and I want you to know that I want to hear about you as a family. And then maybe the first teacher conference, so are there difficult times for you, and we kind of have this?
Right.
Let's talk about an actual real meaty first goal, and if you have something that's concerning you with your child, then this would be a great time for us to kind of talk about that.
Okay. All right, yeah, because I just want to make sure that we document anything that would be a modification to the implementation plan for this ongoing practice, and maybe Emily will feel a little less like it's such a big strategy to tackle if it were just a couple of questions during the home visit, and then another couple of questions.
So I'm thinking if I try that out with a couple of mine and it's working okay, and I'm finding ways of kind of shuffling things around in the basket, then I might be able to try it at one of our, because there's home visits that we do together, there's teacher conferences we do together, because we share the child, and so we could try a couple of those, I could try one with one of those kids, and then together we could talk about, was this feasible in this area, so that I can get that feedback too of not just, oh yeah, I think that went great, and just like, did you see how that parent was squirting? Those kinds of things, getting some other people's insights on, oh my gosh, I just learned so much, that really went well, or boy, it just looked like the parent was totally disengaged by that time, because we've already been talking about so much, so just kind of check out time, which is what I'm worried about.
And I thought it was pretty cool the way you, through the one interview, you found out something very specific about a child who had difficulties in the morning, and then that led you to thinking about your next learning objective, for the practice learning objective for the next circuit. So. Well, thank you for both participating in this peer-to-peer, and then we'll go on to circuit 2.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Emily.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a good night, Emily. All right. See you tomorrow.